Royal Demon says, thanks to this podcast, I've been able to observe games and players through a different lens, and I usually would have watched Melksham's game this week and just dismissed it as being a standard Melksham low possession, no goal game, and would probably be screaming for his head. You guys have helped me understand specific roles that certain players, let's call them role players, have in the side. Case in point, the incredible Melk. You've opened my eyes to seeing that Jake is the perfect player to play a defensive forward role on key defensive players like he did with Andrews a few weeks back. This week he was playing on 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀, who plays a very similar role to Andrews. In the past 5 weeks, 𝗏𝗀 has racked up 15, 12, 27, 21 and 18 disposals and had 5, 4, 9, 4 and 8 intercept possessions and racked up 344, 373, 369, 446 and 535 metres gained. Melky has held 𝗏𝗀 accountable this week, keeping him to a 6-week low of 10 possessions, 3 intercepts and 239 metres gained. On top of that, he had a season-high 5 tackles, all whilst being mauled at every contest without receiving a free kick and, most importantly, without getting frustrated about it and having it affect his game. Well, that's very observant of you, Royal Demon. Perhaps I should listen to my own podcast. I can't take any credit for educating our listeners in this case, with defining the role that Jake plays in the forward line. The credit goes to my incredible analytical co-host, George and B-Man. B-Man, does what Royal Demon brings up and the stats that he provided, does that track with you?
Oh, totally. I hadn't realised how important 𝗏𝗀 was. That was a terrific question, and I didn't realise how important 𝗏𝗀 has been for the Roos, actually, in a team that's in struggle town all season. I haven't watched many of the Roos games, to be honest. So I didn't realise that he played such an important intercepting role. Spot on. And I actually read that question and thought of you, George, that, like you'd be thrilled. 5 tackles inside 50, that's been the knock on his game, in previous season, hasn't it? His tackles inside 50. And it sort of goes to that question about our forward half pressure. It's been really, that question before about it. It's been actually pretty good in the last few weeks. The thing that I was really most impressed about actually in this game was he should have got 4 or 5 free kicks. It was ridiculous. It was flat out ridiculous. Even that, in fact, I don't know whether the commentators, I know that they've got an AFL directive not to criticise the umpires, but even they were pointing out, hold on, he's getting grappled. And I had to laugh at one point because JVR got a free kick for grappling and Melk would have been thinking, what do I have to do to get a free kick? But what I was super, super impressed about, my big knock in previous years for Melk was his sort of body language and, particularly in 21 when, we've talked about it a number of times, but when he infamously kicked the ball out to an empty stand in that game at the G against Adelaide, and we didn't see him again for the rest of the season. And reflecting on that, he's such a proud bloke. Obviously, they all want to play in the seniors. He's an elite level footballer. He's 28, 29. So, he's played a lot of footy. He's a senior player down at the club and super well respected. Of course, he wants to be in the team. Maybe some of that body language was because he never felt confident. He always felt at risk that his place was at risk. And so, maybe that body language betrayed that. But I was really impressed that he didn't spit the dummy at all. And for me, that shows real discipline and real leadership. And I know that 𝗏𝗀 puts them really high on his list of important things. He made a point of noting, 𝗏𝗀 talked about getting drilled at halftime by 𝗏𝗀𝗳𝗏𝗀 for, the implication was complaining about head-high free kicks is what Max said after the game. So I was really impressed with the leadership he showed, the role modelling to the younger players, just went about it, should have got the free kicks, didn't complain to the umpires, didn't betray any negative sort of, just kept going. And for me, that's as big a tick as any of the other numbers that Royal Demon notes, which are super impressive. Most particularly, as I suggested, you'd be thrilled, George, 5 inside 50 tackles. I would be guessing that's probably a career high. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a career high.
Yeah, I think you'd be absolutely right about that. And that's exactly what we wanted him to do.
Yeah.
Apply the pressure, stop looking for the cheapies out the back and put the work in. And he's been doing that for the last couple of weeks. And you're right, I think he realises that there is potentially a premiership medal sitting in the not too distant future if you keep doing what you've been doing in these couple of weeks. Work hard, do your job, the results on the scoreboard will come regardless of anything. And like you said, he could have easily had 3 or 4 goals in this game and should have.
Yeah.
And everybody be singing his praise to the high heavens as a result, because most people just look at the goals and what comes out of it. But it's the hard work.
Yeah.
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
And they've been talking, like the commentators across multiple, Seven and Fox have been increasingly talking in the last few weeks about the critical importance of players like Aliir and Andrews and 𝗏 to that intercepting player, which is one of the advantage, by the way, on a separate attack that Melbourne has is we've got multiple intercepting players. We've got May and Lever who can both play that role depending on where other teams rely on a single player who, if you can take them out, like, if you can blunt Moore and now Murphy out for the Pies, that's a big challenge for any team. And so he's been playing that specific defensive forward role and kicking goals, and now adding that pressure inside 50. That's huge. And he's a lock now, isn't he? Even 3-4 weeks ago, I wouldn't have considered him a lock in that best 22. He's an forgetting he was a lock before Petty's injury. And all credit to him. And just if people want to, I've not heard him speak a hell of a lot, but he's interviewed on SEN. And so if you go to SEN's, the podcast, and I think it's the Sporting World, it's the one with Kane Corns and Jared Healy. There's an interview from last week with Melksham, and it's really interesting because they ask him exactly that question, Andy, about how he's gone as an elite level footballer plying his trade in the VFL and how hard it's been for him to stay focused. And he gives a really honest and direct answer about, in fact, it was extremely hard for him to front up every week and still play at VFL level. So really encourage people to listen to it, because I listened to it and thought, well, that's a really impressive fella.